It's a momentous day in Europe. In just a few hours, Brexit will officially take effect, and the UK will no longer be part of the European Union. But even with everyone on board, it still may be a long road before it's all said and done. Russ Mold of Bell Investments is in London this morning. Russ, do you think European markets have priced in Brexit?
I think they know that it's happening today. The bill was passed in the British Parliament last December. What they still don't know is happening is what's going to occur between now and the 31st of December when the transition period ends. We've another period now of negotiations between Britain and the EU, and we're still left with the options of hard Brexit, soft Brexit, or possibly the worst scenario of all, another fudge and an extension to the negotiations into next year.
Russ, what happens here if Prime Minister Boris Johnson is not able to pull off a trade deal with the EU by the end of the year?
Then technically we get to what's known as a hard Brexit, when the UK leaves the European Union and begins to trade on World Trade Organization rules. It doesn't stop the two partners trading together. It does mean that there will be more costs for the UK to trade with Europe, possibly tariffs, but also just more compliance, more paperwork. So trade will not end, but from a British perspective, it could be more costly. That could start to eat into corporate profit margins potentially.
Do you think the Brexit, Russ, puts the EU into recession?
I think I think the EU and the UK, they're huge trading partners. The EU wants a deal. The UK wants a deal. It's in everybody's interest to keep things sweet. But equally at the moment, you're getting lots of posturing between the two partners. The German economy has been hit by trade problems between the US and China, the US and Europe. Germany desperately needs a deal. So if there was to be no agreement, it would be definitely an additional complicating factor when the economy's not that strong there anyway.
What about prospects for the U.S. coming to a trade deal with Britain? President Trump seemed to be somewhat upbeat about this. Are you optimistic that they can strike a deal?
Again, there is a very good relationship between the two countries historically. Equally, President Trump is no fool when it comes to negotiations. So I'm sure he'll be looking to strike a pretty hard bargain for the U.S. as well. But at least there's good relations there to start with.
Russ, how do you think U.S. investors should think about putting money to work in the UK markets?
I think looking at the UK market overall, I think sterling is cheap, and lots of economists will back that up. So at least one thing that's in your side as an overseas investor is you're buying into a cheap currency. The UK equity market has underperformed for several years. It's very cheap on a yield and earnings basis relative to its own history and relative to its international peers. So there's lots of value to be had there. What you're just waiting for is a little bit of a catalyst, and maybe some certainty over Brexit could be one of those. At least the uncertainty relating to the UK election and a possible Labour government's gone. Now it's deal with the next hurdle, which is Brexit.
Russ, we have to ask you about the coronavirus. There have been, I think, 2 cases confirmed in the UK. Should the markets be worried? What are investors thinking about this over there in the UK?
I think they are worried because they're looking at China, the world's second biggest economy, at one of its key times of the year, a huge celebration, the lunar holiday. It seems fairly inevitable that consumer spending will slow down. There could be a hit to supply chain. So you're looking at a hit to first, possibly second quarter GDP growth, assuming that the virus is contained. If it gets worse, then clearly the ramifications are much greater in terms of Chinese growth and therefore global growth. So you're looking at industries already struggling. Oils, mining stocks have been hit, travel stocks have been hit. If it can be contained, the hit should be relatively modest. But again, if it gets worse and the World Health Organization is clearly becoming more concerned, the impact could be so much greater going forwards.
Russ Mold of Bell Investments in London. Always good to see you. Thanks.
Hey, investors. Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.